Hello everyone, hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to explore a tense and emotional turning point between Toan and Tu Diem. When a quiet new beginning suddenly turns into a moment of fear, forcing Toan to confront the possibility of losing Tu Diem before she even realizes what's happening. In this episode, a small accident reveals just how deeply their bond is forming, even without memories, even without words. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next episodes. The morning sunlight slipped through the old wooden window frame and fell onto the small tea table where Tu Diem sat between Mr. Thu's mother and Mr. Thu. The space felt familiar and quiet, yet her heart was unsettled. Her voice was soft and slow, trembling at moments. She carefully retold everything she had heard. A stranger had recognized Mr. Toan. That person clearly remembered the motorcycle Mr. Toan had left behind, a bike that had been sitting at the local authorities' office for more than a month, covered in dust. The information was not much and not fully clear, but to Tu Diem every detail felt sharp. There was hope inside it, and there was fear. Hope that traces of the old Mr. Toan still existed somewhere. Fear that the past might carry pain deeper than what they were facing now. Mr. Thu listened closely. His expression stayed calm, though concern showed in his eyes. His hand rested on the arm of the chair, tightening when the abandoned motorcycle was mentioned. He did not interrupt. Only when Tu Diem finished did he speak. His voice was low, steady, and clear. He said he would contact Mr. Thu, a former colleague from the agency. He believed Mr. Thu could help check the information, or at least confirm whether what Tu Diem heard had a real basis. He did not promise too much. He only said what he could do, and that he would do it right away. Mr. Thu's mother sat beside them, quietly observing. Her eyes stayed on Tu Diem, gentle and patient. Without saying a word, her presence alone made Tu Diem feel protected. The small room slowly grew heavier. Cold air slipped through the cracks of the door, carrying the chill of an autumn morning. Tu Diem lowered her head. She said nothing more. In her heart, she prayed silently. Even a small sign from the past would be enough. Even if the memory was broken, she wanted to know who Mr. Toan had once been. Time passed, and the morning light softened into warmth. Mr. Thu broke the silence. He spoke clearly about his plan. He would go and bring Mr. Toan back. Then he would take both of them to the small house he had built on the Lichy hill. It was a quiet place, private enough for Mr. Toan to feel at ease. Mr. Thu's mother nodded. Her eyes showed understanding. She knew this decision was not easy, especially for Tu Diem. Tu Diem stayed silent for a moment. A feeling of reluctance rose in her chest. She did not want to leave Mr. Thu's mother. To her, Mr. Thu's mother was not just a familiar elder, but someone like a second mother. Still, Tu Diem understood. Mr. Toan needed his own space. He needed a place where he could recover day by day without pressure. And she needed to be beside him, to care for him fully. At last, Tu Diem nodded. When she spoke, her voice caught. She thanked them. The room felt warmer, though the sadness of parting remained. Mr. Thu's mother placed her hand gently on Tu Diem's shoulder. The gesture was light, yet it gave strength. Mr. Thu stood up to prepare for the trip. Tu Diem looked out the window. In the distance was the Lichy hill, waiting. She knew the decision was right. Even so, her heart felt heavy at the thought of leaving the people who had loved and supported her during the hardest time. Autumn wind swept through the small hut where the old woman lived. Mr. Thu stepped inside, moving slowly and respectfully. The old woman sat there, thin hands gripping the edge of her shirt. Her eyes never left Mr. Toan. In that gaze were longing, worry, and acceptance. Mr. Toan bowed his head. His voice trembled as he thanked her. He said that during these days she had cared for him like a mother. The old woman smiled. Her smile was gentle and deeply moving. She told him to live well with Tu Diem. She hoped he would regain his memory soon. Mr. Thu placed gifts and a small amount of money on the table. The old woman shook her head. Her voice was warm and firm. She would not accept it. All she wished for was their safety and happiness. Her words brought tears to Mr. Toan's eyes. He promised to return and visit her. She reached out and softly stroked his hand. The hut felt crowded with emotion. Gratitude, regret, and hope intertwined. Mr. Thu stood quietly, witnessing the heartfelt farewell. As Mr. Toan stepped outside, the old woman remained standing there, small yet steady, like a flickering lamp in an empty field. Midday sunlight covered the village road. Mr. Thu drove Mr. Toan back. No one spoke much in the car, but the atmosphere was gentle. When the car stopped, Tu Diem ran out. Her eyes lit up when she saw Mr. Toan. She held him tightly, then turned to greet Mr. Thu's mother and Mr. Thu. The family gathered in the living room. Laughter mixed with words of thanks. Tu Diem shared the story of how the old woman refused the gifts. Her voice softened at that part. Mr. Thu's mother smiled and patted her shoulder to comfort her. Mr. Thu talked about the trip to bring Mr. Toan back. Everyone listened with gratitude. The small house suddenly felt warmer, as if it were holding people who had finally found each other again. Tu Diem looked at Mr. Toan. In her heart, she made a quiet promise to care for him with everything she had. She believed that day by day, he would slowly return to himself. The red dirt road curved gently toward the Lichy hill, stretching quietly ahead of them. The car moved slowly, as if trying to prolong this rare moment of calm. Rows of green trees lined the road, their leaves rustling softly in the wind. Tu Diem sat beside Toan, looking out the window, though her thoughts were elsewhere. Images of Mr. Thu's mother, the old woman, and all the people who had helped them surfaced one by one. She knew clearly that without those kind hands, they would not be here today. Toan sat quietly. His eyes faced forward, sometimes drifting to the roadside, as if trying to take everything in. He did not speak, but he no longer looked lost. Each time he glanced at Tu Diem, there was a natural sense of trust in his eyes, even if he could not fully understand it himself. For Tu Diem, that was enough. The car stopped in front of the small house on the Lichy hill as the afternoon light softened. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting pale patches across the tiled roof and the steps. The house was small but neat and bright. When the door opened, cool, dry air flowed out. Inside, the scent of new wood mixed with earth, creating a clean and comforting feeling. Tu Diem stepped in and felt her heart grow lighter. This place did not feel like just a shelter. It felt like a necessary pause for both of them. After Mr. Thu and Mr. Thu's mother left, only Tu Diem and Toan remained. Silence filled the house, but it was not heavy. It was the silence of a new place, waiting to be arranged and lived in. They began to clean. Tu Diem stayed inside. She wiped the table and arranged the scattered items. Her movements were slow, more careful than usual. Toan went outside. He picked up a few tools near the porch, cleared fallen leaves, and organized the things Mr. Thu had left. They did not speak much, yet each of them knew where the other was. A short while later, as Tu Diem bent down to lift a small box inside the house, Toan suddenly heard a loud crash coming from indoors. The sound was sharp and sudden, like someone falling hard onto the floor. Toan froze for a split second. His heart began to pound. He turned and rushed inside. What he saw filled him with panic. Tu Diem was lying on the floor. She was motionless, her eyes closed, her face visibly pale. Toan ran to her and knelt down. His hands trembled as he lifted her shoulders and called her name repeatedly. He checked her quickly. There were no wounds, no blood, but her skin was pale, her lips colorless, and sweat covered her forehead. A clear thought crossed Toan's mind. He guessed that Tu Diem had fainted from low blood pressure. Fear rose so strongly that it almost took his breath away. Then suddenly he remembered something. In his luggage there was a bag of sugar the old woman had prepared for him, just in case. Toan stood up and rushed to the bags, searching quickly. When he found the sugar, he did not hesitate. He mixed sugar water right there, his hands still shaking, but his movements fast. He gently helped Tu Diem sit up a little and gave her small sips to drink. Time passed slowly. Toan stayed close, his eyes fixed on her face. After a while, her breathing became steadier. Color slowly returned to her skin. She moved slightly, then opened her eyes. Tu Diem looked at Toan and asked weakly what had happened. Only then did Toan finally exhale in relief. The tight pressure in his chest loosened. He explained briefly, saying that she had likely experienced low blood pressure. Hearing that, Tu Diem was silent for a moment, then said it was probably because she had been under too much stress these past days. Toan did not say anything else. He pulled Tu Diem into a tight embrace. The hug was sudden and strong, as if he were afraid that letting go would mean losing her. In that moment, Toan did not think or analyze. There was only the fear he had felt when he saw her lying on the floor. Tu Diem sensed it. She did not push him away. Instead, she wrapped her arms around him. She smiled softly, a quiet and complete smile. In that embrace, she felt his genuine concern and his instinctive need to protect her, even though his memories were still incomplete. They stayed like that for a long moment, in the middle of a house that was not yet fully arranged. Outside, the wind continued to move through the Lichy hill, leaves rustling gently. Inside, the space fell silent, holding only the shared breath of two people leaning on each other. The story pauses there. No promises, no clear conclusion, just a moment left open, leading the audience toward what comes next.
Trong tập này, Toan và Từ Diễm chuyển đến sống tại căn nhà nhỏ trên đồi vải, mở ra một khởi đầu mới đầy yên tĩnh nhưng cũng nhiều thử thách. Sau khi mọi người rời đi, hai người tự tay dọn dẹp không gian sống. Từ Diễm làm việc trong nhà, còn Toan dọn dẹp bên ngoài sân. Giữa lúc tưởng chừng bình yên, một sự cố bất ngờ xảy ra khi Từ Diễm ngất xỉu vì tụt huyết áp do căng thẳng kéo dài. Toan hoảng loạn chạy vào, chăm sóc và kịp thời giúp cô hồi phục bằng nước đường bà cụ đã chuẩn bị. Khoảnh khắc ấy khiến Toan nhận ra nỗi sợ mất Từ Diễm là rất thật. Dù anh chưa nhớ lại quá khứ, hai người ôm nhau trong im lặng để lại một cái kết mở đầy cảm xúc.